Monday, 11th August, 1941. I'm in my half-buried tent. The weather outside remains abysmal. The launcher battery released its first salvo into the misty morning. As the first rocket shot into the grey sky, the initial raindrops began to fall. By the 100th round, it was pouring. I'd love to witness such a barrage up close. It was already impressive at Raseiniai. Another salvo just roared overhead, startling me. I anticipate several more today. Despite hearing this eerie wailing repeatedly, it still unnerves me. 300 meters to my right, Dahlmann and Aures are with their tanks by the Luga's bank. They're accompanied by Max Pioneer Platoon, who've positioned a machine gun. Roughly 600 to 700 meters downstream, near the Versa estuary, Oswald commands 5 Skodas and Wilhelm Lope oversees 2 Panzer IV. Since dawn, they've targeted the opposite bank. Their tactics amuse me. Some of their crew might be aiming for tank assault badges by instigating skirmishes. Perhaps I should seek the infantry assault badge. Recently, I've been on countless reconnaissance foot patrols. Given my under-resourced protection platoon, I often have to arm myself with a machine pistol and scout the surroundings with another member. No one else can do it. The relentless rain does little to uplift my mood. Today's situation is as follows. From our bridgehead, the 1st Infantry Division pushes northwest towards Kingisepp Narva. The 6th Panzer Division heads northeast to Krasnoye Selo. An IR 118 battalion moves along the road by the Luga's northern bank towards the approaching 36th Infantry Division from the Sabsk bridgehead. The 1st Panzer Division advances from Sabsk towards the northwest, then, joining us, pivots towards Krasnoye Selo and the Gulf of Finland coast. The 1st Infantry and Panzer Divisions converge, ensnaring the 1st Red Guards Division and other Red Army factions at the Luga. Facing fierce opposition from the Red Elite Divisions at Jurki, our 6th Panzer Division progresses slowly. On the offensive's first day, the 1st Infantry Division captured positions and anti-tank barriers at Srednje Selo. They quickly placed their artillery on Point 61, commencing fire that same day. By the 4th day, I'm unsure of their progress. Our division, the 118th Battalion, is currently halted in the forest near Krutije Ruchji. The enemy remains on the Luga's opposite bank, likely including the observation post directing the long-range railway guns the Russians have stationed about 15 kilometers away near Weyman. However, I'm confident the Russians will soon be defeated. It won't be long before this ordeal concludes. 13th August 1941, on the road before the bridgehead. Our defensive duty by the river has concluded. The Nebelwerfer Abteilung moved forward into the bridgehead, and our platoons, including those of Lope, Oswald and Wünsche, have now regrouped under Hiller. We wait alongside the road before the bridge for the division to pass. We're to join the staff, now directly reporting to the division's commander. Hiller recently mentioned that, in this capacity, we might face fewer risks. He may be correct, since General Landgraf doesn't operate like Kempf, who was always at the front line in his half-track. Regardless, I expect many tasks ahead. Today, the 5th day of the offensive, the Russian force has retreated to a village beyond Jurki. They are now defending with their typical resolve behind a massive anti-tank barrier. Tragically, my old friend Adi Brüggemann was killed in yesterday's battle for this position. He had only recently arrived from the Ersatzabteilung in Paderborn. Like Rudi Daun, Brüggemann was a veteran of the 5th Company and attended Christian Schmidt's training with me. He served in Poland and France, and after his promotion to lieutenant, eagerly anticipated leading the unit he grew up with in Sennelager. Now we stand by the road, watching divisional vehicles pass. The armoured half-track, once led by General Kempf, just drove by. Soon we'll cross the bridge, which Organisation Todt workers are mending from damage by Russian long-range artillery. Aircraft have targeted the bridge too, evident from the vast craters, likely from Russian 1,000 kilobombs. I recall that foggy morning returning from the bridge ahead. The dark bridge framework eerily silhouetted against the sky, the terrain scarred by explosions, the road lined with white birch crosses marking comrades' graves and Russian mass burials. The sight of the burned forest, charred heath, and ravaged houses is etched in memory. We retreated through this devastation, waiting for other army contingents in the northwest to advance on Leningrad. During the 4-week standstill, the Russians fortified themselves so effectively that capturing each stronghold resulted in significant casualties. We're currently encamped in a forest near Jurki. Our leader just met the division commander seeking new orders, but received none. Instead, he was given a fortification map detailing all red positions up to the railway line from Kingisepp to Leningrad. The displayed defenses are daunting, a formidable challenge awaiting use. Fortunately, we've largely evaded the red artillery, especially the railway guns that consistently bombarded our rear with high explosive and incendiary shells. Last night, our own 15 centimeters long barrels moved through, and their firepower is truly massive. As for the impact of Russian artillery on Yers, their 21 or 28 centimeters shells can uproot even the largest trees. One narrowly missed the bridge, causing noticeable structural damage, but by this morning our 28-ton tanks managed to traverse it. The Russians continue building robust bunkers, taking no risks. Adjacent to the village is a wood and sand bunker, untouched by German artillery. Such strongholds can only be breached in close combat, typically by throwing grenades through their firing slits. The scale of the anti-tank trenches the Russians have constructed is astounding. There's no chance one of our Skodas could quickly cross them. The far side wall stands at about 2 meters high, while the approach is a gentle slope. Often, these trenches are strategically placed along rivers and streams, with wire obstacles placed both in front and behind them. In the Jurki forest, well before the primary anti-tank barrier, we found multiple trench lines and an expanse dotted with foxholes. It's evident why our advance has slowed. The defenses we face now are far more sophisticated than what we encountered at the border against less formidable units compared to the elite Red Guard division here. The toll in front of these defenses has been significant. While the campaign has been largely successful, the costs are mounting. Just yesterday, near Sabsk, the 1st Panzer Division took out 70 tanks, as reported in the Wehrmachtsbericht. They're encountering far less resistance than we are. Many have fallen within our bridgehead. Over 100 are laid to rest at the main medical station's cemetery in Volovo. In contrast, the Russians have lost thousands in front of our defenses. Thursday, 14th August 1941. Location: Kingisepp, Leningrad, Rollbahn. Persistent rain and thick clouds darken the sky. The division's meteorologists anticipate regular night frosts in this Russian region from mid-August. Schmauch has provided me with a warm overcoat, while Unteroffizier Albert has shared one of his lightweight Russian blankets. I'm prepared for the frost. Having moved from Jurki, we're stationed a few kilometers north of Wypolsowa, amidst a forest, fronting a formidable anti-tank trench. This trench extends from the road, fortified with concrete barriers, stretching 500 meters across fields until it reaches a dense forest. Bongart's company and the Kradschützen occupy a village near the Luga woodlands, poised to counter any retreating Russian forces. Time will tell if they engage. I recently spent an evening with Theo Langenbruch, now the acting divisional orderly. Our discussion was broad-ranging. Both of us eagerly await our leader's return to resume command. It's evident that our next deployment is on the horizon. The company's restlessness is palpable. Passing bunkers and defenses without contributing feels alienating. We're mere onlookers in this conflict, spectators on a battlefield tour. It's almost as if we should be paying for the experience. The division recently interrogated several prisoners, and I had the opportunity to overhear some of these sessions. An Oberleutnant from the I-11 staff, serving as the division's intelligence aide, observed the detainees and took notes. Sonderführer Stein, a German originally from Ukraine, conducted the questioning. I shared mints I had with Stein, the Oberleutnant, and a prisoner. Stein humorously told the Russian that these were the bullets Germans would use against them, prompting laughter from the Russian. From the interrogation, I learned the Russian, a 30-year-old foundry worker from Leningrad, served in the Red Army for a year in 1933 and wasn't a party member. Drafted on 14th of July, he was stationed at Krasnoye Selo. Their main activity there was digging foxholes and minimal firing practice due to limited ammunition. Recently, they were integrated into a battalion under the 1st Red Guards Division, which suffered significant previous losses. Although he knew a general led the division, he was unfamiliar with battalion or regimental commanders. After traveling both by train and foot, they engaged in combat near the Luga. Facing intense German attacks, he and 8 others opted to surrender. Navigating the fierce battleground, they cautiously approached the German lines and were subsequently captured. The prisoner left a positive impression on me, appearing notably presentable. The brothers clearly lack ammunition, but he also mentioned seeing many tanks, artillery, and flak batteries. Quite intriguing insights. Friday, 15th of August 1941, formerly Gorki Farm. Feldwebel Ulrich from Neuling's company just paid a visit. His team operates nearby. We're still awaiting our deployment orders. Here's the situation. Kohl leads the foremost Kampfgruppe, the only one in the cause to achieve its daily objective, earning him special recognition. Kohl's group is at the frontmost position, past the main railway line. The 36th ID to our left progresses well, while the 1 Panzer Division on the right faces strong resistance, slowing their advance. Kampfgruppe Raus aims to relieve 1 Panzer Division by targeting the Reds from the side. We might join this effort with the recon team and 2 Kratschützen units. Hiller suggests deployment orders may arrive by noon. I hope so. Last evening, I headed to the rear towards Martin Luck's supposed fuel column location, but found him missing, likely at Wolowo. En route, I observed various bunkers and anti-tank defenses capturing my interest. The Russians skillfully constructed an anti-tank ditch alongside a stream on damp terrain, interrupted by a road with a minefield. The ditch resumed across the road. Past the trench, camouflaged artillery bunkers, some even concrete-made, stood behind foxhole-covered areas. Remarkably, they assembled these using lightweight concrete slabs produced elsewhere, combined using cement. It's evident that the Russians are innovative in their bunker designs. Each concrete slab, approximately 25 centimeters high and 1 meter thick, is crafted to allow the construction of diverse bunker types. Additionally, the wooden bunkers they've set up are practically impervious to shelling, unless directly hit on the vision slits. An intriguing incident just unfolded. 8 Ratas pursued our Henschel observation aircraft. In a nimble move, the Henschel maneuvered a tight turn, skimming the forest edge at roughly 10 meters altitude with 2 Ratas hot on its trail. I witnessed the first Rata firing at the Henschel, resulting in the latter bursting into flames upon impact. While I took cover behind a tank during this spectacle, it's notable that Ratas often strafe our columns and release small 2-kilo explosive bombs. After the intense chase concluded overhead, joyous cheers emerged from a nearby woodland clearing, providing a clearer view of the ensuing drama. 1 Rata crashed just beyond the forest line, while the other abandoned its pursuit. From the crash site, a thick column of smoke ascended. Eager to capture the moment, I rushed to the scene, only to be met by 4 more Ratas, unleashing gunfire and dropping bombs. Taking cover in a foxhole saved me from a close encounter with their lethal assault. It was disheartening to see our flak crews seeking shelter instead of retaliating. On a brighter note, we were treated to a sumptuous meal today. Several Feldwebel went on assignments. Opetz has been tasked with overseeing the field kitchen since Enz, the chef, believes his accolades excuse him from working hard to feed the men. Yet, he always ensures a full plate for himself. It's not uncommon to encounter such self-centeredness here. Today, we enjoyed a meal of cabbage and carrot stew with potato bits. Accompanying this were a tin of plums, half a chocolate bar, half a lemon, and a half cup of sugar for each of us. Additionally, the Feldwebels provided a bounty of cucumbers and beetroot. Quite satisfactory, indeed. I've learned that the 1 Panzer Division has overcome resistance and is on the move again. We're now aligned with Cole's group. Saturday, 16th August 1941. Polobizy, beyond the roll barn. We're positioned on the outskirts of Polobizy village. Though we were scheduled to depart, we're once again waiting. Currently, the 1 Panzer Division's motorized infantry is passing through, all in their armored personnel carriers. This division, distinguishable by its unique insignia, certainly has an edge over us in certain respects. We've just been informed that each platoon must provide a plucked chicken for the field kitchen. For a lark, I attempted to catch a few. My radio operator, Gefreiter Stenger from Paderborn, isn't agile enough, and my loader, Wittkötter, lacks the leg span for a quick chase. It wasn't easy for me either. I pursued one chicken through a barn, around homes and vehicles, until it hid beneath a house. After coaxing it out, the chase resumed. Exhausted and sweaty, I only managed to capture the equally tired bird when it got cornered by a garden fence, by me and a cudgel-armed Lanzer. A second chicken was captured similarly. Wittkötter is adept at prepping them. As we're on the move and I jot this down, he's plucking the bird on the engine deck. Naturally, only one chicken will go to the field kitchen. We're now positioned beneath a line of beech trees, sandwiched between a meadow and an oat field. The situation is unclear. The Kampfgruppe has undergone a sudden name change. Instead of Major Römhild, an Oberstleutnant now leads, overseeing a diverse unit, including the Panzeraufklärungsabteilung 715, 2 Gradschützen companies, our Panzer Company, a 7.5 battery, and some flak. Numerous smoke columns rise from burning villages nearby. Combat is everywhere. Previously, our Kampfgruppe was between the 1 Panzer Division's left wing and Kampfgruppe Kohl's right. Our current advance towards Chimosowo is uncertain. Explosions echo ahead and smoke ascends past obstructing pines. An ally fell ahead. A Molotov cocktail hit an armored car, setting it ablaze. As I neared a tree cluster with a page of the Pravda, an anti-tank crew member alerted me to Russians nearby. Our perimeter ends just past their location, making it an unsafe zone for any activity. Currently, the weather is favorable. The scattered clouds provide ideal cover for our bombers, and a gentle breeze sweeps away the dust stirred up by our vehicles. Thanks to recent rains, the roads aren't as dusty. Leningrad is within our sights. Last night, the city's searchlights pierced the sky, resembling large white fingers. Presumably, our bombers were active, as evidenced by the bursts from anti-aircraft shells. My platoon remains stationary, now accompanied by Wilhelm Schopper's heavy unit. The commanding units of Wünsche and Oswald departed when Gassler urgently requested the medical unit. 2 of our tanks were obliterated, belonging to Lieutenant Bongard and Fu Zishang. They're now aflame, with 4 casualties. An Oberleutnant directed them for a flank maneuver. I've always advised Hiller to deploy our company collectively. Now, we're on standby. Notably, our division doesn't have a medical vehicle, as it's been repurposed for resting. I recently visited the front line. The assault has been halted near the woods between Chimosowo and Arakjuli. A fortified Russian battalion occupies the region. Presently, our artillery is dealing significant blows to their positions. They have a tank with a 7.6 centimeters gun entrenched there. I suspect it was responsible for damaging our tank and the armored recon vehicle. It seems to command an extensive firing range. It fired upon the flak officer and me as we retreated from Chimosowo to our tank's location. Successive shots forced us to hasten to the forest's edge, out of its line of sight. Both Bongart's and Zishang's tanks had been positioned on a hill, making them conspicuous from the village of Arokjuli. Initially, Bongart was to target a row of hedges with machine gun fire, but the motorized infantry redirected him. Shortly after, both vehicles were struck. Hauptmann Farah is increasingly testing my patience. His crude and often vulgar behaviors are irritating. He now serves as a loader in Lope's platoon, aiming to earn recognition. His insistent theories on how tank tracks influence transmission have irked many, particularly since drivers have debunked these ideas multiple times. There's a notable presence of enemy aircraft, including 2 unidentified types that dropped torpedo-like devices. The skies here are perilous, with projectiles frequently hitting the ground. Now we're all huddled behind our tanks. Roughly 150 meters from us, a member of a 2 centimeters quad-flak crew has been shot in the leg. It's been quite a day, and it's not over yet. Our advance hasn't been significant. Our Kampfgruppe lacks strength. Prisoners indicate a full Russian infantry battalion lies ahead. Blast. A shell just exploded uncomfortably close. Those Reds and their long-range artillery are maddening. We've positioned ourselves defensively near Gorky, now less than 30 kilometers from the coast and at most 45 kilometers from central Leningrad. Only 20 kilometers remain to reach Krasnoye Selo. We're holding here until the 1 Panzer Division can outflank and capture Luga from the Russians, who are still resisting fiercely. After a week spearheading the division's vanguard, I'm compelled to document the assault's intricate details. It's peculiar how on tranquil days filled with waiting or resting, rather than battling, one tends to record trivial matters. After all, such days are inconsequential. But during intense combat, only a few terse words often get penned. On the 16th of August, positioned before Chimosowo, our vanguard faced a halt in its advance. As night approached, our company prepared to assault Arokjuli. To set up for this attack, our tanks navigated a considerable stretch of forest. To our right lay a pine forest, from which our riflemen moved towards the village. Some of the village homes, ablaze, improved our visibility in the night's gloom. Hiller, navigating his first attack, showcased palpable anxiety. He constantly shifted position, and by the company's full deployment, the surroundings were enveloped in darkness. A brief stillness was shattered by the ascent of a white flare, signaling us to initiate our engines and push forward. We progressed without our heavy platoon, tasked first with neutralizing machine gun positions, suppressing our infantry. The sound of bullets piercing the air and deflecting off our armor was unmistakable. Our accompanying infantry had since taken cover. Panzer crews, in contrast, seemed less perturbed by gunfire. Lope, in his Panzer IV, tackled several enemy positions, leaving wounded Kradschützen exposed. Unable to rescue them, he rejoined us as we formed our line outside the village, unleashing fire on the structures. In this dark scenario, setting the houses aflame provided much-needed illumination for identifying additional targets. However, many Russians had already retreated to a forest behind the village by our approach. Taking position on the right flank, I initially proceeded cautiously, in sync with Hiller's pace. But soon, desiring momentum, my platoon surged forward, reaching a spot roughly 500 meters from the village, from which we bombarded the village. The predominantly thatched dwellings ignited rapidly, lighting up our surroundings. A prominent silo and windmill stood in the village. Though the windmill didn't catch fire, it took several direct hits. Many suspected it was a hideout for the Red artillery observer who had adeptly directed Russian artillery fire throughout the evening. After torching the village, Our unit, alongside the infantry, set up a defensive position within. I was stationed at the village's exit, close to the road, with a platoon of Kratschützen from the Jonas Company, including Feldwebel Westhoff. 4 of our tanks were present. Alongside me were Matusek, Goslar, and Aures, all seasoned Feldwebel. In the obscurity, I positioned our tanks strategically and took the initial watch, with Wittkötter scheduled to relieve me at midnight, followed by Renger and then Pusch, our driver. Behind the tank, we assembled a haystack, offering a comfier resting spot than the cold ground. Renger, opting for safety and calm, slept within the tank, a habit I didn't contest. As my watch neared its end, a radiant red crescent moon emerged, harmonizing with the fiery glow of neighboring burning villages, a truly haunting spectacle. The sight transported me to memories of Hamburg, the joys of my military leaves, and my nocturnal journeys post-night outs. Those days seem distant now. Yet I imagine that if I ever return to Hamburg, these hours in Russia will echo in my mind. Once my watch concluded, I captured photographs of the blazing scene, eager to see if they turn out well. I swapped places with Wittkötter and settled into sleep, first directing Oberleutnant Jonas to the hay bales. The riflemen aren't as privileged as us. They're in their foxholes, exposed to the elements without coats, blankets, or shelter, making sleep nearly impossible. Later, Russian artillery targeted us. I soon replaced Pusch for the watch and entered the turret, readying our weapons and keeping my loaded pistol close. Prudence has become a friend with time. Inside the tank, the driver and radio operator quickly succumbed to heavy slumber. Their snoring became background noise, typical of army life. Soon, the distant hum of motorbike engines and the rhythm of hooves reached my ears, Russians approaching. Almost immediately, machine guns rattled and anti-tank guns fired in succession. Amid the chaos, a call for cease fire echoed, followed by Ruki Wursch. Curious, I exited the tank, turning my gaze to Matusek's tank's firing range. 3 elderly Red Army soldiers approached, leading a horse attached to a cart. Our troops greeted them warmly. On the road, another cart attempted to make a U-turn when gunfire erupted, only to be targeted by the anti-tank gun. I dispatched one of the Russians and some of our men to retrieve the enemy rifles. The elderly soldiers informed us of a 4th injured comrade on the cart. Our troops dispatched the injured horse and left the Russian, feigning death, undisturbed. When they returned, the seemingly dead Russian sprang to life, dashing for the nearby shrubbery. Our machine guns blazed, but he evaded their fire. It's a reminder that not all dead Russians truly are, unless they're rigid and cold. Sunday, 17th August. I allowed the men to rest and resumed my post in the turret. As the sun began to rise, I surveyed the forest's edge through my binoculars. Suddenly, the alarmed cries of magpies echoed from the bushes, followed by the raucous calls of awakening crows. About 200 meters ahead, a lone Russian appeared, steadily advancing toward us, with roughly a dozen more trailing behind. A Russian patrol. Coincidentally, one of our recon patrols was returning from the same direction. The 2 patrols locked eyes through their binoculars before the Russians hastily withdrew. In response, the armored recon dispatched an armored car, cautiously advancing towards the distant forest edge. After a brief on-foot investigation, the car sped back to relay their findings. They had severed a Russian telephone line and confirmed the village's enemy occupation. With everyone now alert, we had breakfast, and I freshened up. However, the tranquility was interrupted by Russian artillery. A malfunctioning shell ricocheted off the ground, skimmed past us, and halted near the infantry's machine gun post. Having just finished breakfast, a messenger arrived from the commanding officer instructing our entire platoon to gather in the village centre, the epicenter of the shelling. Reluctantly leaving our established position, we reached the designated location only to find it nearly deserted, save for a solitary Panzer IV. "Where's the boss?" I asked. Jupp Wellinghoff, an old schoolmate from Osnabrück, who was taking cover behind the tank, pointed below it. There, lying flat, were Oberleutnant Hiller, a Hauptmann from the infantry, Wilhelm Loper, and several others. I quickly joined them, receiving instructions for our impending assault. Our task was to proceed to the forest edge we had earlier scouted, gather the infantry, and then move on the enemy-occupied village of Konochowizy. We were cautioned about potential side attacks from Pleszczewisi, and that was the extent of our briefing. Amidst the commander's orders, all platoons had vacated their defensive spots to meet him at the village centre, leading to immense chaos as they faced a barrage from Soviet heavy artillery. Miraculously, most were unscathed, though 2 riflemen met a tragic end from a direct shell hit, leaving no trace of them. Another lost both his legs. Proceeding to our rendezvous at the forest's edge, we patiently awaited artillery spotters. With infantry mounted on our tanks, our advance began. However, a technical issue with one of the Panzer IVs momentarily halted our progress. As we resumed, I was positioned on the right wing with Wunja behind the road. After covering a kilometre through grain fields, intensifying enemy fire forced our infantry to alight and seek shelter behind our tanks. The well-fortified Russians had multiple defence layers, demanding close proximity to discern their skillfully concealed positions. I targeted potential hideouts with high explosive shells and employed machine guns to hold back Russian soldiers, ensuring our infantry could safely advance. Intense close combat erupted shortly after. I distributed hand grenades to our infantry, essential for neutralizing the bunkers. Those inside hesitated to surrender, perhaps fearing execution. While the left wing was stuck, our side progressed notably. One audacious machine gunner advanced without a helmet, spraying bullets as he moved. We consistently remained slightly ahead of or beside our infantry, suppressing the Russians until they could engage in direct combat. At times, I used my pistol to handle enemies too close for comfort. As we advanced, a group of approximately 20 Russians surrendered. While they were being detained, another 10 Russians appeared from the tall grass, hands raised in surrender. However, one among them suddenly hurled a grenade at my tank. I retaliated instantly with my pistol, and a machine gun wiped out the entire group. Discovering Molotov cocktails in most of their foxholes made me reconsider taking prisoners. We continued to push forward, nearing the village hedgerows. Beyond them, the village houses were discernible, but a dense network of Russian defenses lay ahead. Depleting our ammunition supply, I relentlessly fired into their hideouts. One of my shells annihilated a Russian machine gun on the left. Gaining momentum, our infantry charged, bayonets at the ready. The Kradschützen are reliable allies. They're fierce in combat and have built trust with the 5th Company, ensuring seamless collaboration. On my left, Panzer IVs tackle bunkers. In a sudden turn of events, Feldwebel Westhoff collapses in a potato field, struck by a bullet in his hip. From his fallen position, he propels his troops onward. I have to maintain focus, especially when a Russian tank emerges from a hedgerow break. Its turret hatches gape open as it enters our firing range. 500 meters, armor-piercing! I switch to an AP shell, preparing for the confrontation. Wittkotter hastens to prepare the Skoda VZ, and I direct 5 armor-piercing rounds at the Russian tank. Through the radio, Wrenger coordinates with Matusek, who joins the assault on the tank. But a sudden hail of bullets strikes our turret. The sting of paint shards on my face is a clear reminder of the awaiting Russian infantry. I retaliate, targeting a foxhole. 2 figures emerge, but are swiftly subdued by machine pistol fire. Our infantry proceed to secure the remaining foxholes, paving our way into the village. A small group of infantrymen remains closely behind my tank. The houses ahead no longer pose a threat, engulfed in bright flames. Several Russian lorries blaze alongside the main road. Navigating through the village, I spot 3 Russian tanks attempting to vanish into the cornfield to the left. I quickly relay the information to the platoon. Over the radio, I hear Wunsch's voice, a voice I'd become more familiar with in later engagements. The entire company soon engages the fleeing tanks. The middle tank, which I had targeted with multiple shots, halts abruptly. I momentarily rejoice, thinking I've disabled it, but it lunges forward, vanishing into the nearby woods. Russian artillery soon retaliates, bombarding the village with 10.5 centimeters shells. One shell strikes Volmer's tank engine directly. It's miraculous that he survives. The shell was inert, filled with a concrete-like substance. The top fused portion detached, while the bottom penetrated the armor, halted by the engine block. Had it been live, the tank would have been obliterated. Continuing the advance with the Kratschützen, we methodically clear the village. Each barn and house presents a new challenge. In the village's last house, I alone capture 10 soldiers, along with 2 mortars and a machine gun. The once chaotic scene transitions to an eerie silence. I position my tanks defensively, preparing for whatever comes next. I direct Aures to the right, while Matusek, Gra, and Gobler remain with me. We prompt several more Russians to emerge from the cornfield ahead before sending them under guard to the rear. The guard is also tasked to inform Hiller of our ammunition shortage. As Russian bombers and Ratas approach, we hurriedly camouflage our tanks. Flying so low, the red stars on their fuselages and under their wings are distinctly visible. To my right, Aures advances. Curious, I survey the surrounding terrain. A group of German infantry approaches our position, intermittently stopping. Distinct gunshots indicate they're under fire. Aures, nearing a thick cluster of bushes, triggers a sudden appearance of several Russian soldiers, hands raised. They rush toward our position. Aures has discovered over 50 Russians in hiding, primarily older men, around 40 to 50, former Leningrad factory workers. No officers or commissars are among them. We allow them to retain their personal belongings, ensuring they have essentials when they reach the Reich. Near my tank, by a house corner, lies a body. The deceased's upper skull is missing, testament to the 3.7's effectiveness. Isolated gunshots continue to zing past. In the field ahead, more Russians are discovered. With the infantry's help, we detain about 30 prisoners. Wittkötter, hoping to find soap, ventures out with the infantry to inspect Russian rucksacks. I accompany him, and with just our pistols, we approach another Russian group, armed with at least 1 machine gun and several scoped rifles. After searching them, we allow them to retrieve their belongings before piling up their weapons. We find 2 machine guns, 1 machine pistol, 2 mortars, 10 scoped rifles, and many other new rifles, all manufactured in 1941. Searching for water, Wittkötter stumbles upon wooden boxes filled with bottles. Excitedly, he exclaims, "Herr Leutnant, vodka!" However, our hopes are dashed when we realize they are Molotov cocktails. Curious, we test a few. They have an impressive burn time and can be thrown effectively. Each bottle is filled with a flammable liquid, sealed with a cork, and equipped with a phosphorus-coated matchstick held by rubber bands. To use, the matchstick is struck on a specially provided surface, and then the bottle is thrown. Upon impact, the phosphorus ignites the liquid, causing it to burn for roughly 2 minutes. The 2 chickens we previously prepared and placed in a pot on the tank's rear had been damaged, rendering them inedible. It was a regrettable loss of effort and potential nourishment. I approached Hiller, frustrated about our lack of sustenance and, critically, no ammunition. However, as I was updating him, we were instructed to gear up for another offensive. I protested, making it clear I wouldn't follow through. Hiller relented and instructed me to remain as reserve. He departed, and I awaited the ammunition lorry and field kitchen's arrival. Meanwhile, another batch of prisoners gathered in the village, contentedly munching on roots and raw potatoes from the fields. To them, the war was over, and they were relieved to not have faced harsher fates at our hands. Once resupplied and fed, we trailed our group towards Tbilisi, with our riflemen boarding. En route, we encountered no opposition but did pass a blazing Russian tank. Upon reaching Rekisko's farm, we discovered a roadblock made of farming tools. Our Kampfgruppe's commander sped by, in his armored car, to assess the situation. Progress was smooth, with Tbilisi already secured by 1 Panzer Division. We bypassed several Russian tanks and artillery positions destroyed by 1 Panzer and soon met with their division's external defences. For a brief respite, we settled in a small forested area. It could have been a comfortable spot, but as soon as we ignited a fire and readied a new pot for our chicken, orders came in for us to mobilize once more. We swiftly packed our tents, stored our equipment, and positioned our platoons by the road. The commander intended for us to move towards Pankowizi, but due to incorrect instructions, we found ourselves headed the wrong way. Instead of confronting the enemy, we travelled down a well-paved road, leading to the heart of the 1 Panzer Division's sector, Ostmekara. Limbrun boasted in his peculiar dialect, suggesting an armoured vanguard for added protection. However, his confidence waned when, after an extended drive, we didn't find any Russians, but instead encountered a Kampfgruppe of the 1 Panzer Division. We were promptly ordered to reverse course, and we sped back to Tbilisi. It was evident that such hurried manoeuvres took a toll on our Skodas, and especially the Panzer Ifs. That same evening, there was a proposal to march towards Pankowizi, this time in the correct direction. However, we weren't on board with the idea. Together with Hille, we met Limbrun to express our reservations. Had Hille gone alone, he might have been persuaded and would have likely returned convinced of the plan. Thankfully, the Kradschützen Recon platoon's commander sided with me, also opposing such a reckless move. It was eventually decided to launch our attack on Pankowizi at dawn the next day. With our departure scheduled for early morning, we tried to get some rest during the short time left. Before the mine barrier, we veered into the open field to the right, approaching the village with Lope and Oswald flanking me. In the process, a beehive was crushed, unleashing agitated bees with painful stings upon us. We established a defensive stance near some houses, and local girls fetched water for us. I took the opportunity to freshen up and mend my torn tunic with the help of a girl. Later, due to Soviet artillery targeting the village, we retreated to the forest where the friendly fire incident with Oswald had occurred. Interestingly, the village was primarily inhabited by Protestant Finns and Estonians. In one house, the owner displayed a German edition of the Lutheran Bible. These Estonians used the same alphabet as Germans in their newspapers. A local offered me milk, and it was evident that the village had well-maintained homes and attractive inhabitants. Our soldiers, having not seen women in a while, were notably intrigued. Settling amidst shrubbery, we began cooking our chicken using a borrowed pot. After a shave, we found ourselves amidst an artillery exchange between the Germans and Russians, with many shells landing perilously close. We also received mail, including a parcel from Clara containing lemons and films. In return, I sent her undeveloped films and some laundry. On Monday, 18th August, we were roused early and began prepping our vehicles. Leading the convoy was Wünsch's platoon, followed by the Panzer IV, and finally Oswald, along with Matusek and Aures, brought up the rear. Unfortunately, Gobler's tank had broken down. Riflemen perched atop our tanks as we journeyed into the dawn. We first passed a village where residents, their possessions loaded on carts, stood ready to flee to the forests at the first sign of conflict. As we traversed a thick forest, we suddenly confronted the enemy. Our riflemen disembarked and pressed forward. Reports came in of enemy tanks ahead. One of the Panzer IV retaliated. Wünsch's radio transmissions became a constant stream, with more Panzer IV positioning themselves to counter the enemy, especially a significant Russian tank. Some Russian soldiers fled, but then Wünsch identified an anti-tank gun from the right. As Oswald responded with firepower, we tragically misidentified our target, inadvertently attacking our riflemen. Hauptmann Knaust demanded we halt the onslaught, and upon confronting Oswald, he defensively retorted. Later, the grim revelation was that our misfire had harmed our own soldiers. What Wünsch had identified as an anti-tank weapon was actually a minefield, which his tank narrowly avoided. The alleged tank in the barn? Merely a threshing machine. Precious ammunition was squandered, all stemming from Wünsch's flawed judgment. After a rainfall, we were on the move again. Tasked with leading the company back to the village, a collision with Pusch's tank hurled Wenger and me onto the road. In the process, my arms hit the cannon barrel and my face struck a storage container. Miraculously, our tank, which had veered into a ditch, didn't topple over us. The pain rendered my arms nearly immobile. In Ronkowiezi, riflemen mounted our tanks. We then navigated through artillery fire towards Klopizy, securing a vantage point for the impending attack on Muratowo. The threat of an attack from a nearby Russian airfield loomed, positioning my platoon to defend that flank. However, this meant collaborating with the Aufklärungsabteilung, less familiar to us than the Kradschützen, who had been our comrades since the campaigns in Poland and France. Our formation consisted of 4 Skodas, Dahlmann on the far left, followed by Matusek, then me, and ours to my right. A Panzer I-4 was stationed behind for fire support. As we advanced, we faced fire from some bushes on our left. In response, 2 self-propelled 2 cm quad flaks and a platoon of 2 cm flak guns targeted these bushes, effectively suppressing the threat. Concurrently, we worked on neutralizing nearby foxholes. Blasting each target with a shell followed by a spray of machine gun fire proved effective. Soon, Russians began to scatter. Over the radio, Hiller's orders came in, urging us to accelerate. I responded, "I won't advance without my riflemen." My infantry lagged over 500 meters behind. Despite Hiller reiterating his orders, I ceased responding. To my right, a vehicle towing a limber caught my attention. Taking a few shots, our attention swiftly shifted ahead, finding ourselves amidst the enemy. To my dismay, the vehicles on my left weren't keeping pace. Taking a brief survey of the surroundings, I spotted 2 Russian soldiers in a nearby foxhole. Drawing my pistol, I shouted a command to them. One attempted to raise his rifle, prompting me to act decisively. A full pistol magazine ensured they posed no further threat. Facing more foxholes ahead, we launched high-explosive shells. Realizing the absence of the 2 tanks on my left, I swung around to find Matusek's tank ablaze. Dahlmann, momentarily stationary, eventually closed in on my position. Reporting the loss to Hiller, I advanced. To my left, a Russian played possum. I grabbed the machine pistol from the turret and fired at the figure, who collapsed, a grenade slipping from his grasp. While targeting distant figures, I noticed Dahlmann's tank engulfed in flames. Behind it, 4 silhouettes suggested the crew had escaped. Our riflemen were nowhere in sight, and the vicinity was swarming with Russians. Surprisingly unscathed, I hurled grenades towards a bush on the right. After exhausting my grenades and several rounds of ammunition, I could finally catch my breath, even as the Panzer I-4 tackled more Russians to the left. Turning right, with Aures to my left, we skirted a line of towering pines, the Panzer I-4 trailing. In the village, our Kradschützen were rooting out remnants of resistance in intense close combat. The village resembled a farmstead with dilapidated structures. I momentarily paused by a shuttered house, a strange sensation washing over me. Moving forward, the reason became clear when the passing Panzer IV faced a barrage of grenades from the house. In response, combined firepower from the Panzer IV and riflemen decimated the building. We soon move on, and after crossing a vast cornfield, we regroup with the company. All platoon leaders are summoned. I inform Hauptmann Knaust about the loss of my 2 tanks and request a dispatch rider to check on my crews. Our next objective is Mulatovo, and we're to proceed along a slender forest trail. Riflemen join us, and we navigate the dim woods. Strikingly, there's no Russian presence. My tank now carries an entire mortar team, relieved they don't have to carry their hefty equipment on foot. The road is treacherous and muddied. I brace for an explosion indicating a mine has been triggered. Yet, we continue unimpeded and without confrontation. Emerging from the forest, the impending attack on the next settlement finds us enveloped in darkness. With limited visibility, determining potential minefields becomes a challenge. But we must press on. With me at the forefront, the tanks halt just before the village, allowing the infantry to sweep through. As they signal completion with flares, we advance to establish our positions alongside the path. Wilhelm Lope is present, also down to 2 tanks. We erect our tents, ensuring our tanks are concealed using house doors and foliage before designating sentinels for the night.